Well, howdy folks, and welcome back to Pecan Ranch. Today I want to talk to you all a little bit about what you need to raise cattle. Just kind of my thoughts on the equipment that you should have, and the things that I thought I could do without and later discovered that I couldn't, and I'll explain all that here in a moment. So we will see you all here in a few moments over at the cattle pasture. Well, welcome back folks. So I want to talk about some of the infrastructure you need besides the obvious. Hey Miss Jenny, how are you doing? What are you doing in there? You know you can get out if you want. Hey Miss Jenny, what are you talking to me for? She was whispering at me. She wanted me to say hi. Miss Jenny's a sweetheart. So you have the typical infrastructure that's pretty obvious. You need fence. Now, in my experience, you don't necessarily need watertight fencing. And what I mean by that is my fence is not all that great. I've discussed this pretty recently in my electric fence video. And so I run a hot wire in here. This is basically our cattle training pen. All of my cattle are pretty easy on fences to begin with. So that's very helpful. I can train them in here and they don't try and test the fence, and they will experience that electric shock, so I can eventually move them out onto the back pastures that are only electric fence, and they do very well back there. They've never got out on just electric. Surprisingly enough, because my steer calves are little troublemakers, but for whatever reason, these goofballs have never wanted to get out. I think that they have experienced that shock pretty good. I know Charlie did, my bull, when he was younger. He stuck his tongue to that fence and it surprised him. He jumped back and he just about did a backflip, and he's never once attempted to test electric fence ever again since that moment. So what I'm talking about today is primarily the importance of a catch pen and a cattle working system. So as you all had seen in previous videos, when I only had just 2 head of cattle, I didn't have this catch pen set up. I didn't have this working system set up, and I honestly thought that I could get away with it, and you can to a degree. I'll have to explain how, but let me explain how this system works and how my system is set up. So I have this round pen set up with 6-foot tall panels, and you can do shorter panels for just like a little catch pen if you're just trying to catch them up to get them out of your way while you're moving a tractor in and out of a gate or something along those lines. But for a working system, you want something pretty heavy duty, because if you're going to be working the cattle, and by working I mean the point of this system and the way it's set up is to push them into this sweep tub, eventually into the alley and into that squeeze chute. So you may be walking behind them. They may not necessarily want to go into those places, and so if you have smaller panels and you don't have them reinforced with T-posts, then they may potentially be able to knock it over, get out, things of that nature, especially when you're dealing with a decent amount of cattle and larger cattle. So you want your perimeter to be solid. You want your catch pen to be solid. So, and it doesn't take much. Just I use these heavy panels that are 6 foot tall, and I use 1 T-post per panel, and it keeps it pretty secure. It doesn't move. Now, optional but not necessary, I have a little 4-foot gate in here. Maybe it's a 3-foot gate. I might be wrong. I think that's a 4-foot gate. I have this in here, and the reason I have this in here is so that I can walk in and out of it without having to go through that 10-foot gate that I generally, in the summertime, am gonna have this cattle rub hanging over in a manner that they have to go under it and disperse some fly repellent on them. That way I don't have to duck under it and all that jazz. So that is another main reason why you should have a cattle working system, or at the very minimum, a round pen, a catch pen, so that way you can feed them in an area that forces them to go through a certain path, so that way you can easily apply your fly repellent. These are all lessons that I learned the hard way, and the main this is not cheap equipment per se. When Charlie's mom was still around, she got sick, and she got sick with what is called anaplasmosis. Now, anaplasmosis is it is a disease that is transmitted. It's a bloodborne illness that is transmitted by flies and biting flies. Last year we had just a record number of flies. It was insane. This year I have taken a lot of steps to mitigate that problem and mitigate that issue and greatly reduce the risk of my herd getting something that could kill them from biting insects and flies. And I can talk a little bit about fly control in another video, but basically one of the biggest steps is that you need to be able to get fly repellent on them. That's helpful. Obviously you can prevent flies from even spawning by utilizing a feed-through insecticide that goes into their manure, and that helps a little bit as well. And I'm taking a million different steps this year to reduce the fly issue and hopefully eliminate it mostly altogether. Hey there, little fox. How you doing, baby boy? You coming to see if there's any scraps left? Is that what you're doing? So you definitely need a catch pen for them to come in and eat. A concentrated area. They also know this is home base. This is where they go. This is where their feed is at. And you can string up this cattle rub across the entryway and then soak it with a fly repellent, and they have to come under it and get fly repellent on their back in order to get in and eat. So the round pen, this area, this catch pen area, is beneficial for that purpose, to have a central area that you feed them in. And if you are rotationally grazing, you can have a round pen set up, and they're easy to take down and move if you're just setting up just a catch pen. I have one that I use in the back whenever we rotate them into the different paddocks, and that can be taken down and moved easily because I don't have it set up with T-post or anything. It's just stands up on its own. They're held together by these pins. That one is not as heavy of panels. These are heavy panels. Those are lighter panels, call them cowboy panels. They're also shorter too. They're 5 foot tall, not 6 foot. So I can just break that pin down, move it to the next pasture, and set it up. And I don't have a 10-foot gate for the entryway for the cattle. I have a smaller 4-foot gate that they come in, but then I also have a second 4-foot gate. Again, the reasoning for that is because I have a cattle rub that I hang up in one, and that prevents me or allows me to walk in without having to step under that cattle rub and get fly repellent all over me. So that's beneficial. Now, this working system is, this particular catch pen is set up in a manner that's a little bit more heavy duty than that one, because it's not just for feeding them. If we got to do things like administer shots, like antibiotics if they are sick, or if we have to, to give them a dewormer, or just in general if they have a wound and they don't want you near it and you need to spray some antiseptic on it or something, you can get them into this working system. Now, my cattle are pretty easy to handle, but that doesn't mean that they're going to let you give them treatments. I have all of my cattle with the exception of one, Miss Tina here, my boss cow. She's not real fond of me touching her, but all of my cattle will let me handle them just fine, more or less. Deborah, she can sometimes be a little uncertain of me. Wait, what are you doing, LaFonda? she'll let me touch her, but she tends to only mostly let me touch her when she's eating. Charlie, on the other hand, baby Charlie, big boy bull here, he's been with us forever, so he loves the pets and the attention. Don't you, Mr. Charles? Don't you? Don't you, big boy? You like, are you being camera shy? Huh? So he'll let me handle him, but he won't sit still for me to give him a shot if I have to. You like the nose boops? Boop. Boop, boop. So he won't stand still long enough though for me to, or sit, if you try and give him a shot, it doesn't feel great. It may hurt a little. And so you're dealing with a 1,000-pound animal. You may not be able to give them that shot in an open environment. So that's where having this catch pen working system set up with a sweep tub and squeeze chute. So let me explain and show you a little bit how a cattle working system works. We'd bring the cattle in here, we would close this gate right here, and then they'd be closed in here. So then we come over here to the sweep tub and we would open this gate up. Now their only way out is through this sweep tub, and so they'll come in through here. And with the sweep tub, what we can do is we can take this fence and then we can push it through, which will sweep them into the alley. Now, once they're in the alley, and working this works pretty efficiently and well. If you have at least 2 people, you could do it by yourself, but it is definitely better to have 2 people. So once they're here in this, once they're swept into this alley, we can open this slide gate up, get 1 cow in there, one cattle in there, and close that behind so that if we have multiples in that sweep tub, say 1 or 2, then we can close it behind so we only have the one working through here. Once they're through this alley and we have a cattle in there, I can pull a lever which will open up this gate here, this swing gate. They'll come in. I'll have this it's kind of hard to do one-handed. I'll have this head gate open. So with this head gate open, they're going to see a means of escape. And so I'll swing this open, cattle will come through, then close the head gate that holds them in place, and then I can apply light pressure with the squeeze chute on them and squeeze them in place. That'll keep them from jostling around, and they'll be stuck in here. And I can do something like, say they have a wound somewhere, I need to put some antiseptic, something going on with their hoof, maybe I need to trim something up, or administer medication if need be. And I can do that through these slots, or I can also open up these side panels as well, except this one in particular is kind of stuck. So I can drop down these side panels here and access, you know, their hooves or things of that nature. Make sure I close that head gate, because otherwise I will have one of those doofus steer calves try and go in that way for some reason, because they're very curious. Typically speaking, a cattle working system minus the squeeze chute is roughly $2,500, give or take. Depending upon your supplier, where you're getting it from. I have a really great cattle panel supplier that I work with a lot. I buy all my cattle panels from him, and it's roughly around $2,500. The market fluctuates a little bit. Cost of steel might make those prices vary. I know that after I had purchased all of this, prices did go up. Roughly speaking, this pen is about $2,500 to $3,000 to get a round pen set up with a couple of gates, an alley or a sweep tub with a swing gate, a alley with a sliding gate, and then a squeeze chute with a head gate. That's really pricey. That alone was $2,500 whenever I bought it. Now they're selling used for about $2,500. So all told, you could spend between $5,000 and $6,000 setting up a cattle working system even if you don't have a very big herd. You got like 2 or 3 head of cattle. So you might think to yourself, do I really need to get all of this equipment if I just have 3 head of cattle? Well, probably not, but the time that you do need it, you're gonna really wish you had it. So I've amended I initially thought, well, you can pretty much handle most cattle most of the time if you get them, comfortable with you. And that is true. But there are some things that you just almost absolutely need to have a squeeze chute for. And so that's a very pricey piece of equipment. The round pen alone, you can get something set up way cheaper than $2,500 because you don't need a sweep tub. But the minimum, absolute minimum, you need to have a catch pen. And the reason I say that is it's useful in many ways. You can work them in there so that way you can do maintenance to fences or gates or something along those lines. You don't have to worry about them running off. You can at least get them in a concentrated area to attempt to administer medication if you don't have that squeeze chute. And there are products available to allow you to administer medication without a squeeze chute that could save you money. But if you don't have a squeeze chute, what you will need is you'll need a dart gun. You'll want a dart gun so that way you can administer medication for cattle that they're just not going to stand still while you put a needle in them. So you'll have to have a dart gun, but you still need a catch pen. Still need a round pen setup, so that way it's easier. You've got them in there, and it's a smaller area, easier to work with them. And then you'll just, shoot them with a dart gun filled with medication, and you can get away without having a squeeze chute. I would say just plan on the expense of getting a working system and a squeeze chute set up, so that way you can work your cattle with a whole lot more ease. So that's the working system and round pen. I have a very similar round pen set up in the back pastures that I'll move from paddock to paddock with them. And that one is smaller, lighter panels, easier to move, and this one stays here. This one will stay here year round, and that's the other one's just for when they're away from their home pasture in the spring and summertime as they're rotating into the grazing pattern. Another piece of equipment that you probably are going to need. You don't have to have it, and you can get away without it, and I'll explain the alternatives, but you're going to want a tractor. It'd be very nice to have a tractor whenever you're dealing with cattle. And the reason for that is if you have any amount of cattle, feeding them in the wintertime, a round bale is the most cost-effective means of feeding them. It is way cheaper than purchasing square bales. It's way easier than handling square bales. A square bale, depending upon the hay and the quality and where you're getting it from, whether it's alfalfa or Bermuda or orchard grass, it ranges in weight between 60 to 80 pounds or so per square bale. Now those square bales are going to cost you anywhere between $10 and $15. It varies a good bit, but a round bale you can get for between $40 and $60, depending upon, again, quality of hay and where you're at and the time of year. So a round bale costs more, but it's anywhere between 1,000 pounds to 1,500 pounds. So you're getting more bang for your buck. It's far, far cheaper to feed and easier to feed with round bales. What's up, Deborah? Are you so interested for what? What are you up to? No? Don't want to hang out? Okay. So how do you move the round bales? Well, the easy solution, the simple solution is a tractor. Well, tractors are expensive. And that is true. And for a year, I used my neighbor's tractor. He let me use his tractor, and till the point where I just felt really bad about using his tractor all the time. So I ended up buying one. I found a good deal on my tractor. It's a 1954 Farmall Super M that still runs really great. It's been well maintained. Isn't that right? You like your hay? Is that good hay? Yep. Boop. Oh, you got bull snot on the camera. So moving round bales, you almost definitely need to have a tractor, but you can do it without. So you could raise cattle without a tractor, and there are a couple of alternatives. One, you could feed square bales. You can manhandle square bales, or woman handle it for my lady farmers. You could do that, but it will cost you more, and it will be a lot more work. My herd will go through about 1,000-pound bale right now in the dead of winter in 7 to 10 days. Roughly speaking, that means that you're going to be putting out 20 square bales throughout the week. So that's about 2 to 3 a day. So you're having to lug around 50, 60-pound bales at least once a day, and you're having to put 2 or 3 of them out every single day. That's a lot more work. It's going to cost more, and so it just makes sense when you're feeding any more than like 1 or 2 head of cattle to go with round bales. Now, you can move round bales without a tractor. There are such a thing that are called bale buggies. And a bale buggy, what it is, and I'll see if I can find a picture and put it up so you can see it. A bale buggy is a little trailer that will allow you to pick up round bales and then unload them without the use of a tractor. Are you coming up to say hi, Miss Jenny? Did you notice I was still out here? Hey girl, how are you? How are you, sweetie? Do you need some attention? Have you not been getting enough attention? Huh? My sweet Jenny. She's a good girl. She's a real good girl. Aren't you, Miss Jenny? Yes, you are. Just the best. So these bale buggies, you can... What are you expecting from me, huh? So bale buggies... you could tow them with the side-by-side or even a truck or something like that. They have a trailer hitch on them, and they will allow you to pick up a round bale into this little trailer and then move it to where you need to move it to and then unload it. Now, it is far easier to move and organize round bales if you have a tractor, but you could get away without it. So you don't necessarily have to purchase a tractor, which can range, anywhere between $4,000 if you find a really good deal on one, and it's going to be older, to upwards of $20,000, $30,000 if you're looking at something like a John Deere that is newer. So they can get real expensive. Now, the benefit to me of having a tractor is not just moving hay. There are other things that I can do with said tractor. There's a lot of work that can be accomplished on a farm if you have a tractor or access to one. So odds are, if you have a farm, you're probably going to be at some point or another wanting to get a tractor. You can start out without a tractor, but I'm telling you, don't lie to yourself. You're going to end up with a tractor anyways, no matter what. So might as well just kind of expect one day you'll have a tractor. So the minimum equipment really honestly is a round pen. You need to have a catch pen set up. You have to have that. You need to have some means of moving hay, whether that be planning on moving square bales, or if you're going to do round bales, then you need to get yourself a bale buggy. What, are you trying to nibble me? What's up, Jim? You'll need to have some means of administering medication. So in my case, I don't have a dart gun, and the reason I don't have a dart gun is because I have that working system, and I can put them into the squeeze chute if I need to give them a shot for some reason or another. It's kind of difficult to scale down in cost and startup cost. The reason I say that is because personally I would having my experience and knowing what I know and having dealt with what I've had to deal with in losing that cow, and it was a nightmare. We loved that cow. We planned to have her on the farm for years, and then so her dying on us was unexpected. It was a lot of work too, because it was on a weekend. I wasn't going to be able to get an emergency butcher date or anything like that, so we had to process, you know, a 600 or 700 pound cow ourselves, and we're up till like midnight breaking down cuts and everything because we didn't want her to go to waste. But between doing that and seeing, and in my experiences, I could have probably prevented that. And I could have prevented that if I had a working system and I could have gotten her medication earlier. Experience is oftentimes the greatest teacher. It's oftentimes lessons that are hard learned don't get forgotten, and that's the case with me. But I'd like to hopefully allow for you all to avoid making those mistakes. And so me personally, if I only had 1 or 2 head of cattle, I'd still have a working system. It might not be as big as this. I'd have a few less panels in the round pen, but I'd still have a sweep tub, an alley, a squeeze chute, and a catch pen. I would have all of that because so that being said, scaling down, it almost costs $5,000 if you want to raise 2 head of cattle, or if you want to raise 6 head of cattle. So it's, cattle can be kind of tricky, and it almost makes it more worth it to raise more than to just raise a few because of the cost of equipment that you have to, you really honestly need to have in order to effectively take care of your cattle. And you have as a farmer, I feel like I have a responsibility to my animals to be able to give them the best care that they possibly could have. And that, if that means having to spend $5,000 on equipment just to be able to administer medication, then that's what it means. So anyways, I hope this was informative for you all. If you like it, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, so that way you don't miss any of our videos. And until the next time, we will see you all back at the ranch. One last thing, it's a piece of equipment I did not mention, and I feel bad for leaving you folks hanging. I sat here and talked right in front of it for a while, and that is a square or a round bale feeder. It's not a necessary piece of equipment, but it will help reduce waste. It's pretty simple concept. Keeps the cattle from wanting to climb up onto the hay, and then consequently they'll poop on it, and then they don't want to eat it. I don't blame them, but it keeps them from climbing up mostly. We have a mischievous steer calf over here that likes to climb in there on occasion, even though it has these S-bars that should prevent him from getting in there, as well as another steer calf that will get stuck, that has got stuck twice. It's a side note. Anyhow, it's not a necessary piece of equipment, fairly inexpensive. They range in price depending upon design between like $200 upwards of $300 or $400. I highly recommend getting one. Not a huge necessity if you don't have many cattle. If you have 1 or 2, they likely won't make a huge mess of the round bale, and you could be fine just setting out a round bale, and you won't have a ton of waste. So, but if you have more than 1 or 2, you've got 5, 6, or in my case 8 plus a donkey. You have to have it, otherwise you'll be going through hay like it's cool, because they'll just scatter it and waste it and not eat as much of the hay that I put out. So anyways, now until the next time, we'll see you folks at the back of the ranch.